Hey, what's up? It's Rick Dees in the morning. Right now, VinnDog.
Let's get ready to split the alleys and go hard in the yard for Jesus, baby.
Access granted.
Hey, what's up, everybody? It's VinnDog in the house, and thank you for dropping by. It's going to be a doozy of a podcast. Don't let the government be your dad. You are self-governed.
Sir, yes, sir!
And now it's time. Going live from a 35,000-foot view, the Captain America for Jesus himself, VinnDoggRadio.
Well, good afternoon, everybody, and good evening to you wherever you may be around the world, and good morning to certain folks around the world. It is VinnDog on a Monday, and yes, we are excited to have a great Monday afternoon podcast for you. I am blessed and really thrilled to be here with you. And may you do me a favor, please like, share, subscribe to this channel. If you're on YouTube, if you're on Getter, Gettr, please hit the follow switch, repost, please share. If you are on Rumble, please hit the follow switch on Rumble. If you're on X, formerly known as Twitter, we're broadcasting live there too. Please do hit the follow. All right. So before we start the show, I want to say if you feel led on your heart by the Lord to support the podcast, and thank you to those who asked me to keep them anonymous that have supported the podcast to keep it going. And that is I'm very grateful for that. And please do share the podcast, and we need your prayers. I want to give a shout out to the folks over at Jeremy's Razors. Yes, unwoke yourself, and they just sent me this bag, and what else here? And they sent me Jeremy's candy bars. These are, I heard they're really, really good. It is chocolate peppermint is one of their new ones, the chocolate peppermint. And they also sent me a Jeremy's razor. And this is good for the men. Unwoke yourselves and get your Jeremy's razors today. All right? So please do go to jeremys.com and get your razors and all the good stuff. And they also have stuff for women too. And when you go there, tell them I sent you. They're wonderful folks out at Jeremy's. And I'm going to try one of these candy bars later on. I just can't do it right now because I got a lot of talking to do. And it's going to be an exciting afternoon and early evening. And I have got a treat for you, and it's my good friend and brother, Mr. John Holler is here. Let's go to John right now. How you doing, sir?
Benny, how you doing?
Good.
It's a beautiful day here in Ohio, by the way. It's absolutely awesome.
Oh, wow.
It's one of those days you would, when I was still working, I would play hooky and go play golf. I mean, it's 73 degrees, no humidity, clear blue skies, a gentle caress of a fall breeze, and it's just absolutely awesome. Colors in the trees. Awesome day to be outside.
So basically you're getting all the fall colors in, huh?
Yeah, they're not as good this year because we were in a major drought. We did not have any rain for over 3 months, hardly.
Wow.
And that doesn't really, I mean, you guys are used to it out there in Southern California.
Mm-hmm.
That's normal, but it's not normal here. So it was a very weird year. It was very wet early, then very, 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 very dry. And now it's just beautiful. But the dryness, it affects, the leaves started changing colors early. And they're not as spectacular because they just, they didn't have enough moisture. They do better if there's moisture during the summer. And we had nothing.
Mm-hmm.
But it looked like the crops still did well too, though. That's the crazy thing. Let me just share a story. I used to travel around the state a lot, and there's a drive from Springfield, Ohio. You've heard that in the news recently, up through the Miami River Valley up to Mechanicsburg, and it's sort of an up and down hilly Ohio. And it's corn as far as the eye can see. And every time that I go there, I'm just like amazed that God was so gracious to us that we get these little seeds and we throw them in the dirt, and then he provides the rain, and we get these massive these crops. I mean, the corn over there looks like little trees.
Mhm.
And it's every year, year after year after year. We just put these little seeds in dirt and we grow food. I mean, I just think it just seems like to me when I see it, I'm just stunned at God's graciousness and creation and all that stuff.
Mhm. Yeah, it is quite amazing. So we were
Now
all
we're
trading.
messing it up.
Yeah, pretty much, pretty much. Yeah, those balloons that are in the sky thing, you know.
Yeah, so yeah, it's a crazy world. You know, when the presidential candidates are arguing about who did better at working at McDonald's, then we know we've kind of crossed over to the other side a little bit.
Hey, but it was kind of cool to see him, handing out French fries.
Yeah, it was. Look, it was, and then they said, but they screened the cars. Well, yeah, they just two people have tried to kill them already this year. What do you expect? They're going to screen the cars. How stupid can you be? So,
Hmm. Yeah.
but the other candidate has. I had very low expectations,
Mhm. Oh, yeah,
and
especially when it comes to Bob Marley.
but she's gone under those.
Hmm.
She's done the what's that thing where you try to get under the bar? You know the you bend over and try to get under the low bar, but
Oh, yeah, yeah. She tried the limbo, huh?
the limbo. She's way down there. I mean, she it was a low bar and she's still getting under it. So,
Oh man.
in my opinion.
Oh, and by the way, I'm going to be seeing you at the end of the world conference because supposedly I have a table there, courtesy of Tom Hughes.
Okay. Well,
Yeah.
then maybe you were the one. I heard him talking to James Cadiz today
Mm-hmm.
on his program, and he said, "I've got some special guests coming," and so
Yeah.
you may have just revealed one of them. So
I probably was
that's
supposed to keep that a secret.
Vin Dog with the scoop.
Oh man, but it's going to be a great time that weekend because there's going to be a lot of great speakers, including yourself there,
Yeah.
and I think a lot of people are like, oh, isn't it like doom and gloom at prophecy conferences? I'm like, absolutely, actually, no. People are excited to
Yeah.
be there.
Look, it's sort of yeah. I mean, there's some doom and gloom and everything. There's tough times coming, but we win in the end.
Mm-hmm.
We always have to keep that in mind. I talk about a lot of stuff and it does sound like doom and gloom, but I have to tell you, I don't lose sleep over it
Mm-hmm.
because first of all, there's nothing I can do to change it anyway. It's what's happening, and we have to deal with it.
Mm-hmm.
And honestly, uh, we generally have it a lot better than a lot of other people and a lot of other places
Mm-hmm.
around the world. And they're armed open conflict. I know we'll talk some about Israel and what's going on in the Middle East today, and
Mm-hmm.
the wars and rumors of wars that are just popping up everywhere. And
Mm-hmm.
so, look, we know that some of these things are prophesied, they're predicted, and um, I grew up. My father was in Europe, Normandy, and after, and got injured there in Belgium. I think just before the technical beginning of the Battle of the Bulge.
Mm-hmm.
Um, I to this day I cannot watch the first part of Saving Private Ryan
Oh yeah.
because that was guys like my dad who were doing that, and he was a theology student and he got put in the infantry and then stuck on a boat and went to Europe.
Oh wow.
Handed a rifle. I don't think he'd ever fired a rifle before. So, but that's the way of the world. So I think we're on the verge of something like that happening.
Mm-hmm.
So I think the cautionary tales when you see that happening, take some precautions.
Mm-hmm.
Store up a little food, water, and that type of thing. Make sure your gas tank is full.
Mm-hmm.
Uh, I don't know. I don't know exactly what's going to happen. I have some friends who make some pretty dire predictions. They look at some
Hmm.
prophecies that guys have made. And right now, I can't say that the guy who made them 30, 40 years ago is a false prophet. It hadn't happened yet. And it could still happen. I really don't know. We
Hmm.
know there are wars prophesied in Daniel and elsewhere that I think are going to happen here in the end times. And we live, boy, what's going on in the Middle East is so incredibly significant.
Hmm. It is incredibly significant, and I firmly believe we as believers, we should really feel pretty joyful that we're living in such a time as this. And also, we are not really working towards the end. We're working towards the beginning, actually.
Somebody posted in the comments that your mic sounds scratchy.
Oh, really?
Yeah, we were having trouble with my mic before we started, but now they say yours sounds a bit scratchy.
Oh, boy. I got to fix that problem on the
The
fly.
Yeah,
So, what
well,
are your thoughts on that,
you
John?
sound fine to me, by the way. So my thoughts. So listen, in Jewish eschatology prophecy, pattern pattern is part of the prophecy. So let me give you an example of that as to how Middle Eastern and Jewish rabbis and others would think about prophecy. So I've been down to Machpelah a few times. Machpelah is at Hebron. It's an old tomb. While I'm talking, I'm going to try to bring up a picture of this, and it
Hmm.
it's one of these incredibly fascinating places that let's see here if I can get this up.
There we go.
Let's see. I'm trying to. Now let me go back one thing here. Oh, tab. I had thought doing this. So okay. So this structure was built by King Herod over 2,000 years ago. I talked a little bit about this yesterday. I've been here several times, and this stands like it stood at the time of Jesus. And so King Herod, just so sort of a history lesson, King Herod, of course, was an evil, wicked king, but he really tried to ingratiate himself with the Roman authorities and with the Jewish people. So he did some things like he built these pilgrimage sites, and he built three places. One of them was Machpelah. It's actually today it's considered the second holiest site to Jews in the world. He also built the Temple Mount, and I want to dispel any notions that other people have. The Temple Mount in Jerusalem is the Temple Mount. That's where the temple stood. It wasn't down in the city of David, and there are a whole host of reasons we can go into. But he also built a place. He also built at a place called Mamre, which is also it's about 2 miles from Machpelah, and it's in the city of Hebron. There's a mosque right next to it today. There's an office building. There's an Arab school right there, and because these were very, very important places to Jews. Of course, the Temple Mount being where Solomon's temple had stood.
Right.
Mamre was where in Genesis chapter 18 it says, and Yahweh met Abram by the great oaks of Mamre. So this is where Abram actually had an encounter with the Lord. And I believe it was the pre-incarnate Jesus Christ. And by the way, three people came to him at that time. And then when we read in Genesis 19, or when we get into the story of Sodom and Gomorrah, there's only two angels there, but there were three at Mamre. So I think the third one was the pre-incarnate Jesus Christ. But it was a promise is like, you're going to have a child, which was kind of an amazing prophecy or statement to make to Abram because he was an old man and his wife was way beyond the age of fertility. But so this is where he got the promise. So Herod knew that. So he built a structure there for a pilgrimage site. Then he built one here at Machpelah, and Machpelah was referenced a little bit later Um, Abram went to the guy that owned this cave outside in Hebron. Hebron, as a lot of people say it, and he bought the land. It's one of the Jews made a few real estate transactions back in those days, and one of them was this. He bought the cave because he was that a cave to bury his wife in. And the guy tried to give him the cave, and he said, "No, I want to pay you for it, and I have somewhere sitting around here." Well, now I don't see it. Maybe somebody, maybe somebody stole it. My wife's. Oh, here it is. I don't know. Whoops, that was my Armana letter replica that just fell onto my desk.
Oh no!
But I don't know if you can see this. It's a coin. It's a commemorative coin, and you see in the coin, you can. It doesn't show up very well, but you can see the building there that I have in the picture. So I got that from the guy who's head of the Jewish community of Hebron. As a friend of mine. And so in this cave, this is where Abraham was buried, where first Sarah, then Abraham, then Isaac, and Rebecca, and then Jacob and Leah. Leah. Rachel, Jacob's other wife, is buried up at Bethlehem. So when you go there today, there's a synagogue and a mosque built on top of this structure. But the walls and foundations and everything, these have stood through earthquakes and everything for 2,000 years. And it's just an absolutely incredible place. So this this structure, when the Muslims took over back in the 600s, the Jews were banned from going up on top of the structure for, I don't know, 1,200 years until 1967 war, when they won and they were allowed to go back up there. So, it's over 1,000 years. They were restricted. They could go to that lower corner of the building. It was called the seventh step at the time. And you can see the wall is discolored there because that's where they went to pray. Now they can go up into the synagogue up there. The Muslims go into the mosque. And there are they're like giant tombstones. They're called cenotaphs. And the cenotaph is it's like a giant tombstone. It's not where Abraham is buried. They're buried, the bones are in the cave underneath this structure. And people have actually gone down in there and found bones. And the Jewish tradition is the reason why Abraham wanted to buy this cave was because this is where Adam and Eve were buried. Now, I don't know if that's true or not. I'm just telling you what the Jewish tradition is, but I want to sort of do what Jewish prophecy does. So in Genesis chapter, I'm going to get the reference wrong, 35 or 38, Isaac died. Of course, Abraham died. He's in the cave. Sarah before him died. She's in the cave. Isaac dies. And this is at a time when Jacob and Esau were not getting along. They never really got along. And we know that Jacob is the father of Israel, and Esau is the father of the Ishmaelites, who are.
That's where they came up with Islam, right?
I think so. In the modern, I believe the modern Arabs, particularly the Palestinians, are Ishmaelites biblically. It's also called Edom. And there's a phrase, I think it's Genesis 36, verse 8, says Esau is Edom. Because Esau married into the line of Ishmael, who was a son of Abraham by Hagar, the handmaiden. So anyway, there's been this massive conflict ever since between Jews and Arabs. And we see it playing out right in front of us every day in the news. But what it says there, but the way a Jewish person looks at Genesis, they look at it and they see that at the funeral, at the burial of Isaac, Jacob and Esau came together.
Mm-hmm.
And it says Jacob, and the verse just says Jacob and Esau came together. to a Jewish person looking at eschatology or prophecy, they see that pattern. They think the book of Genesis is a pattern for everything, the suffering servant, Joseph, and that sort of thing, and Jacob and Esau reconciling at Hebron. And so if you really talk to someone who's into it, they will tell you that yes, someday there will be a reconciliation between Jew and Arab at Hebron.
Right.
And so that's why. So when you look at these old buildings, they're not just there, sort of like a Christian Disneyland to go visit. They actually have very, very deep meaning, and they also have an eschatological meaning in many cases.
Mm-hmm.
I talked a little bit yesterday about the Pilgrimage Road in Jerusalem. I know Tom Hughes has talked about that some.
Mm-hmm.
And I was there, it's almost 2 years. I can't believe it's been almost 2 years since I was there. And every time I go to Israel, Benny, I just get this. It's like the truth of Scripture just like washes over me like a flood. It's hard to describe. And look, I'm kind of an emotional guy at times. I don't watch Hallmark movies because I don't like to cry in front of my wife. And
Hey, that's the same thing with me too.
yeah, now she's got this great American channel that she's watching, and I'm like, do they have the same formula for movies? She goes, oh, shut up, go play golf or something. Stop making fun of my movies. But the emotional connection that I, as a Christian, a follower of Jesus, and it only makes sense with all these Old Testament scriptures put in place in context. The land there is just an incredible connection for me. So when I go to a place like Machpelah, it's a very faith-affirming and emotional thing that happens. And the same way with Mamre. I've been to Mamre a few times. The interesting thing today is Mamre, where the whole promise was made to Abraham about his offspring. Jewish people aren't allowed to go there. It's in an area. If you go into that area, there's big signs that say, "This is area," big red sign. "This is Area C under control of the Palestinian Authority," and entry into this area by Jews, by citizens of Israel, is prohibited by law, subject to fine and imprisonment. And so you see this when you're traveling around Israel, as an American, I'm not subject to that law. There's risk going into these areas. Hebron is a hotbed of terrorist activity, Hamas cells and that type of thing. But there are Jews in Israel that have not been to these places ever. It's to me, it's absolutely shocking. This part of their heritage, they're not even allowed to go see. It's just, I don't, well, I do understand it. There is some risk. When the last time I went to Mamre 2 years ago with a friend, we'd been at Machpelah. We went to the ancient Tell at Hebron, where there's the tomb of Jesse and Ruth. You might remember those names from the Bible. Ruth was Jesse was the father. So I guess it was David's great grandmother was Ruth, and Jesse was his father. Anyway, the tombs are there. It's where David had his palace for 7 years, where he ruled Israel at the time until he moved to Jerusalem. So, and then we went from there to Mamre, but there were checkpoints all over the place. Not sure exactly what was going on, but I mean, I would say 4 to 6 soldier rifles pointed right at me that day. And I'm telling you, they were pointed at me with the business end, because they don't know when you're driving through there whether you're a good guy or a bad guy, and they have to make a decision. Fortunately, they made the decision that we were okay, but we had to drive around about 4 or 5 checkpoints to get from Machpelah to Mamre. And that's the reality of it is. And so a lot of my Jewish friends have never been to Mamre. They just have never been. It's crazy. And by the way, if you want to learn more about these places, I think the best channel that I could recommend is a guy named Joel Kramer, and he has a YouTube channel called Expedition Bible. And the first time I went to Mamre and Machpelah and Hebron and a lot of these places, I was with Joel Kramer, who's an archaeologist, been over there for probably, well, it's got to be pushing 20 years now. And he really knows the land. And his channel it's archaeology. It sounds boring, but I'm telling you, he makes it so interesting and alive. It's just an incredible place to be and visit and learn. And so you understand when you stand there in Hebron, there's history, a lot of history. If Jewish tradition is correct, all the way back to Adam and Eve, but there's also a future there. And they believe that there will be a reconciliation between Jew and Arab. Now, that's a little bit hard to believe. But the other thing that I'm seeing among Jewish friends is an expectation of the coming of Messiah, Mashiach. Mashiach is coming. Now, they have a different concept of it and everything, and so there's a great divide on that yet, but eventually there's going to be a reconciliation among everybody in Mashiach. And I think the day of that is getting closer and closer. I may not live to see, well, I'll be around, but I may not still be alive on the earth when it happens. To me, it's a fascinating place. So that's why I have this hankering and love for Israel. You know. You still there? I'm not hearing you. The vagaries of live, or the risk of live radio. So, Ben, you must be muted or something. You know, I could just talk the whole time. So sorry, folks, this is just a technical difficulty here. And anyway, so I'll talk while Vinny tries to get back in. I don't know if I'll have to restart this or not. I'm sure he will text me if, I'm sure he will text me if that's true. So anyway, so that's the story of the land, folks. There's, again, I would highly recommend, if you want to learn more about this, you go to Expedition Bible on YouTube, subscribe to that channel, and you will learn an immense amount about the Bible and the places in the land. And Joel does an absolutely fabulous job. So that's the so I know we're going to talk about Israel and what's going on. And so I'm going to try to monitor these things. I'm going to keep going, and hopefully Vinny will come in. So let's talk a little bit about what's going on in Israel with regard to the war. There are a lot of things I want to talk about, by the way. This election that's coming up in 2 weeks is so important. Go vote, vote early. I'm going to vote early because I'm going to be in California during the day of the election. In fact, the day of the election, Tom Hughes and I will be down at Calvary Chapel of the Harbor, I think in Huntington Beach, doing an update. I think it's 6:30 or 7 that evening. And then, of course, following that, as Vinny mentioned, is the End of the World Conference at 412 Church in Temecula. That's Friday, Saturday, and Sunday, the 8th. I think it's 8, 9, and 10. We'd love to have you join us, James Cadiz, James.
I guess I'm back
Hughes.
now.
Okay, there you are. You know, it's not really. If my wife was here, she goes, "Wow, you got what you wanted, an open mic and nobody to stop you."
Oh, I think it's awesome.
Anyway, yeah, you sound good. So anyway, so I was just telling about the conference coming up November 8, 9, and 10, and telling about the importance of the election. It's so incredibly important. You know, look, I think if one candidate wins, it's clear to me that we're under God's judgment because we get the leaders we deserve. There are a lot of things that they have planned. Talk about this a long time, a lot of the time. And one of the things I'm very concerned about is the restrictions on speech that I think are coming. It is like it's like the whole of government everywhere is trying to shut us down and silence us, and that type of thing. So what happens is the EU is enacting very severe restrictive measures on speech. And what happens is the social media companies say, okay, well, that gives us what we want, so we'll put restrictions on speech to comply with the Europeans. And we're not going to say, well, we'll treat things differently in America, where they have the right of free speech, theoretically. And so we just won't distinguish between the two of them. And then what happens is the restrictive things happens. Vinny, I don't know if you know this, but in Scotland, it's Scotland, recently came out with regulations to protect, it's sort of similar to our SAFE Act, the Access to Abortion Facilities Act, under which some Christians here in the United States, they've gone to these abortion clinics, they've stood in the hallway, they've stood on the street and prayed, and they've been charged with a federal crime, and some are doing as much as 7 to 10 years in federal prison for violating the act. Now, you can go burn down a federal courthouse during a Black Lives Matter riot, and nothing happens to you. But if you're a Christian and you pray outside an abortion clinic, you can be arrested. And so there's been some examples in the UK. There was a lady, she went out in front of an abortion clinic and she bowed her head, didn't say anything. She was across the street and they came and arrested her for being intimidating. And because she was praying, she goes, well, how do you know I'm praying? I'm not saying anything. But she was charged with a crime. And sometimes that's all they need. If you know anything about as a former trial attorney, I do know a little bit about the criminal justice system. Sometimes getting charged with a crime is all they really care about. They don't really care if they get a conviction because they charge you with a crime and it's going to cost you tens of thousands to millions of dollars to defend yourself.
Wow. So they're getting paid basically, right?
Well, I mean, they're the prosecutors. They have a government job and they get paid regardless whether they win or lose, but you get charged with the crime. And even if you win, so there's many famous cases. There's a publisher named Conrad Black, and he keeps getting drug into court and tried, or even Donald Trump is drug into court, and he gets these convictions. And even if he gets these convictions overturned, he's spent millions and millions and millions and millions of dollars defending himself, and there's no place for him to go and get that money back. It's gone. So when we had the dispute about the things, we have an election coming up on November 5th, we had disputes, and a lot of attorneys got charged with crimes, and they eventually copped a plea because it was uh, it was bankrupting them to defend themselves.
Right.
And so, a lot of people get upset about that, but it's like if you've not been through it or been close to people who've been through it, I don't think we really understand uh, the problem. And I think that the person that you ought to fear the most in America, not a president, not a cop, not even FBI, it's a rogue prosecutor because they can literally destroy your life. And we see
Hmm.
this happening. There's John Eastman, who was dean of Chapman Law School there in Southern California, and he was defending the president in over disputes that happened back in 2020
Yes.
election, and he's been disbarred. Now he's appealing it, but he has spent millions of dollars defending himself. And look, I'm trying to be objective about this, but he didn't do anything
Mhm.
wrong.
Right.
He was
Um,
just on the wrong side of the issue because there's always election challenges. It happens all the time. So I'm concerned about where this free speech is going. So back to the UK. In Scotland now, they've put in place regulations that say within a certain distance of an abortion clinic, which they defined as female reproductive services clinic or some ridiculous term. We know what's going on there. If you have a prayer meeting in your home and somebody in the abortion clinic knows about it, you could be charged with a crime.
yeah, I heard it was like like a 650 square foot radius or something like that going on.
Yeah, it's something like that. It's a couple hundred meters of the
Hmm.
of an abortion clinic. So you can be in your home with other Christians praying, and if somebody finds out that you prayed about abortion, you can be charged with a crime. Now, whether you're convicted or not, again, that's not that's not what's relevant. That's not what they're after. What they're after is chilling speech that they don't like. And I can assure you that if Kamala Harris wins this election, you will see an attack on speech unlike anything you've ever seen.
Hmm.
The World Economic Forum a couple weeks ago had a conference, and of course they had Lurch, John Kerry was there, prattling on about things. But the subject of misinformation, disinformation came up, and Kerry said right there, I played the tape yesterday in my update.
Oh yeah, I watched it. Yes.
He said, yeah, we would like to do a little bit more, but we've got this problematic thing called the First Amendment here in the United States. And so they're redefining what speech is so they can restrict speech of people like you and me and people they don't agree with. And I'm just telling you, it's there's also, I did a prophecy roundtable, I guess it was last Tuesday, with
Hmm.
Patrick Wood-Britchelette and Scott Townsend on, and we call it transhumanism, technocracy, artificial intelligence, but it's really about the intrusion of technology. And there's a recent article in the Financial Times where they found that people who have different theories, sometimes they're called conspiracy theories, about the way the world works, that if you just sort of restrict their access to information that's only contrary to what their conspiracy theory is, they will change. And that's all done through control of searches and information that you see. There's a left, he's probably a Democrat, but I can't remember the professor. He testified in front of Congress last year that in the 2020 election, he believes that it was a swing of 10 percentage points from one to the other to change the swing of how people voted in the last election just by controlling the ranking of searches on Google and other places. And now they're using AI and that type of thing to make that even more difficult to get information. So you only see information that's contrary to to what you believe to be, and what you know to be true. And they've got studies out there now that have been published that say, yeah, we do this and we will actually change how people think by controlling what they see.
Wow. Okay, so
Given the time that we live in, that ought to be fairly frightening.
yeah, it is super frightening. So I watched a video clip on Instagram the other day, and some people said Jesus is Lord and Jesus is King, and she goes, "Oh, you got the wrong rally."
Well, now they're saying she didn't say that, or she, I've seen all kinds of spin on that rally where she said that. I heard what I heard, and she said something. Now, it may just been a canned response. I don't know, but I listened. And of course, what did they do yesterday, though, to cover it over? Well, she was speaking in a church down in Atlanta or Philadelphia or someplace.
Mm-hmm.
Well, so they knew they had a problem. So, okay, here's Kamala going, listen, I don't know if she's ever been in a church before, honestly. So it's all a show. It's all, it's very concerning. But I'm just saying that if this election goes a certain way, we are in big trouble in the United States.
Yeah.
And the only way you're going to get it is to litigate it and win. And so let me just say something about Trump and his convictions, because I've got some friends, they just cannot stand Donald Trump, and I understand that. But this thing that they went through in the state of New York, where he got these like 34 felony convictions.
Mm-hmm.
I'm an attorney. What was done in that case was absolutely egregious from a legal standpoint. And I would think this, if they had actually had Charles Manson on trial for this was wrong. It was wrong on every single level. And there's a tape out there, you can find it. I watched part of it last night. They actually had the Court of Appeals hearing. So Trump has appealed the convictions, and the judges on the Court of Appeals in New York, by the way, were like, this doesn't make any sense. We've never seen anything like this. Have you ever done this to anybody else? Well, we could have done it to somebody else, they say. But the end of the hearing was more not defending the legality of what they did. It was asking the court not to sanction them for their bad conduct.
Oh,
that's
my.
The prosecutors. Now, I don't know if that decision will come out before the election. I pray and hope that it does. That conviction cannot stand. It is totally made up, fake, all of this stuff. I'm just telling you, it turns the law on its head. It's awful. But so you can find it out there on YouTube, the live stream, the recording of the live stream of the oral argument. And the prosecutors defending what they did look horrible, so bad. A couple of the judges said, well, we probably should sanction this. And so their rebuttal at the end of the hearing was not defending what they did to try Trump. It was why the court should not sanction them. So I think there's a very good chance that the court will overturn those convictions. So what happens then? So what do you, where do you go to get your reputation back when something like that happens? You know what I mean?
Right.
It should have never happened in the first instance. It was horrible, awful, illegal, unethical, all that thing. So think of all the people and time and everything that's been done. Think of all the millions of dollars John Eastman and other lawyers that advanced claims of then President Trump or defended him, who are being threatened with losing their licenses. I mean, there's a law firm here in Columbus I actually used to work for them, and they're having I think, if I understand correctly, an internal battle because some of the attorneys in the firm decided to defend President Trump.
Oh, wow.
And it's splitting the partnership apart. And so, and that's what they're doing is they're trying to chill so nobody will represent Trump or anybody like him, because if you do, you risk your livelihood. And this is what they do in, Colombia, Cuba, Russia, places like that. This is not what they do in America. This is what they do in third world dictatorships. And it's being done right here in America right now by the administration that has a candidate, by the way, who nobody voted for to become the presidential candidate. She hasn't gotten a single vote yet. I have as many votes to run as president as she does in primaries. 0. It's hard to process what we're seeing.
So let me ask you this question about this whole thing. So do you think this was a practice for them to give a warning shot out to the people? Like, if you try to question us, we will do this to you too.
Oh, there's no question that that's the case. Absolutely, 100%. That's what they're doing. And look, I mean, as somebody who's a lawyer, and I've gone into court, and sometimes you go into court and you may not have the strongest case. Okay, it's the way our system is. It's an adversarial system. One side presents their case, the other side presents their case. Sometimes your case isn't that good. Sometimes, though, you want to come up with a novel legal theory, which you're allowed to do.
Mm-hmm.
But like what they're doing now, to say like John Eastman, who was not raising a novel legal theory, he was raising the same theory that Democrats had raised in prior elections, like the election just before that one. And he's lost his law license. One of the most respected conservative constitutional scholars in the United States. And he's as of now lost his license and has to appeal it to get it back. And I watched part of the hearings that, they brought. It was a kangaroo court. It was, listen, I've been in cases where lawyers have had very bad cases, very bad arguments.
Mm-hmm.
But I'm saying that this is being done on an epic scale, and it's all in one direction.
Wow.
And now they've weaponized a large portion of the justice system. Listen, I'm just telling you, if an FBI guy comes to your house, don't talk to him. I'm a law and order conservative guy, Benny.
Mm-hmm.
And I'm just telling you, I've been through investigations that involve the FBI, and you have to be extremely careful. I've been doing some interviews with a guy from the UK named Mark Sutherland, and he's got a bunch of videos and stuff that he's done, particularly on free speech, involving protesters of the last election and what's happened to them. And I'm just telling you, that has been a massive propaganda job. The conduct of people like Liz Cheney and others, and the way they conducted themselves in those congressional hearings, is egregious. And what are those people going to do to get their lives back? I'm just telling you, it's like living in a third world communist dictatorship country, what they're doing. And so they figured out how to weaponize the legal system. So this is, there's a guy named Mike Davis, who has a thing called the Article 3 Project about judiciary. That's Article 3 of the Constitution. And he says, this is republic ending stuff that's going on by these people. And so if you want it to stop, there's only one way to vote in 2 weeks or over the next 2 weeks, whenever you choose to vote. You cannot vote for her. You vote for her. I know this is often said, but I really believe you're voting to end the republic.
We there's a lot of thinking that people really have to come to grips with when it comes to things that are happening in the United States. There are people that are in other countries like France telling people that are from here, hey, please don't be a missionary here. We got it covered here in Europe. You need to go back home to America and witness to your people there because we see you guys burning down from the outside looking in.
Well, look, this is happening too, though. I mean, I have friends in the UK that are very concerned about the direction that that's going, particularly the weaponization of the legal system against Christians over there right now. And I love the UK. I've been over there and traveled and spoke. But, listen, it's bad enough, Vinny, that if I go over there now, let's say somebody invites me. By the way, if anybody wants to invite me to Scotland, I'll come. Ireland, I'll come. England, I'll come. I love the place. Wales, I'll come there. And I'll bring my golf clubs. But in the back of my mind, I'm thinking like, do I have to be careful what I talk about if I go there? It's in the back of my mind. I'm not going to change, but I'm telling you that it's something that's to be concerned about. But look, they have these laws now. This is unbelievable to me. People who criticize a certain religion that originated in the Middle East and spread across North Africa and the Arabian Peninsula in the 600s and 700s have now immigrated on an epic scale to England. I was in England, let's see, this would have been 5 years ago, 6 years ago. And we stayed at a hotel 4 blocks from Marble Arch, Speaker's Corner in Hyde Park in London, the famous free speech area. Vinny, this is 6 years ago. Our hotel was a Marriott, had 50 channels on that you could select from to watch.
Right.
10 of them were in Arabic.
Wow.
In the heart of London, 4 blocks from Speaker's Corner. The entire area was Turkish, Pakistani, Iraqi. I didn't even know Iraqi had like a cuisine that you put into restaurants, but there were Iraqi restaurants, Afghan, Turkish. It was very, and I'm not opposed to immigration. I mean, that's that brings up another topic: is the demographics of the world are collapsing everywhere. Which
Yeah.
I think is very. I think I talked a little bit about it yesterday. So let me talk about demographics for just a second, because I don't think a lot of guys in Bible prophecy talk about it, but I've been talking about it for a while because it's so 4 years ago in the Tehran Times, which is an Iranian newspaper, publishes stuff with the approval of the Iranian government, the Ayatollahs and everything. They've got committees that review everything that's published. They reported, the Tehran Times said that the decline in female fertility, that's how many children an average female produces. You have to do 2.1 on average to stay even. That the decline in female fertility in Iran had been the most rapid decline of any country in human history. That was them reporting about themselves. So put this in the context of the Middle East thing, which I think we're going to talk about in a minute here. When we see these wars that are prophesied in Scripture, And we know these Ayatollahs are committed to the destruction of Israel. There was a big sign and a big square in Tehran just the other day. We're at war with you. It's a picture of missiles raining down on the Temple Mount around Jerusalem with the Dome of the Rock there in the middle on the Temple Mount. And it said, we're coming to destroy you, and this is just the beginning of the story. Meaning those missiles they sent in a couple weeks ago, the 180 ballistic missiles, that's just the beginning. And I saw a stat today that Tehran has the ability to launch 700 missiles like that a day for months and months on end.
Wow.
What do you do with that? So they say they want to destroy Israel, but now put on top of that, their country is collapsing demographically. So they've always thought long term, we want to control everything in 50 years, 100 years, 200 years. That's how they think. We're concerned about what happens, in the next 24 hours to see how it affects the polls for the election in a couple weeks. They're thinking 200 years. We don't care if it takes 200 years. We're going to destroy Israel and the Jews. But now they know that we're running out of people. We're going to start running out of people. So my question is, does that make them more or less likely to engage in these prophesied end time wars? And I think the only conclusion you can come to is, you betcha. So this is very prophetic.
Mm-hmm.
I mean, I was looking at the statistics. Japan will lose 2 million people in population this year. Last year, they lost 1 million. Now, I think the numbers are a little bit on the optimistic side. So they project out to 2100. There's a website that tracks all this stuff. Populationpyramid.net, I think is what it is. Japan is projected used to be around 100 million. Now it's in the 70 millions, I think. And they're projected by 2100 to have 15 million people in Japan.
Wow.
That's less than half the size of today's Tokyo. That's all they will have in Japan. And the West, I mean, this is true of Russia, it's true of China. China will have, and it's the most popular, and it's hard to wrap your head around it. China will have half the people in 30 years that they do today.
Wow.
What does that do geopolitically? Now, some countries are growing, but as people get successful in everything, the birth rates usually decline. But across the West, South Korea, don't know how to say this, very prosperous country, make great video screens and that type of thing. They're worse off than Japan.
That's not good.
No. And then so what happens is the remaining people are aging. And so what have we done in America with this is, and I just saw a thing this morning I wanted to bring up. The abortion is now the second most important issue to people in the election. Now, we as Christians, we oppose abortion for biblical, ethical, all these reasons. But understand that for 50 years, I started law school in 1977. Roe versus Wade was still a fairly new case, and we spent a lot of time on it in constitutional law class, talking about how did they get to this conclusion. And I had a left-wing professor, constitutional law professor, and he said it was a nonsense case. That was almost 50 years ago.
Mm-hmm.
But we had 50 years where they could argue and drum into people that unrestricted right to abortion was the law of the land. And what has happened? How many people have we lost, not been born in America since Roe versus Wade?
Close to 65 million.
That's right. And I think where did I hear it? I don't know. I might have listened to James today, just because he's like he's like a shot of coffee right into your vein,
That I know.
And good guy though. And he was citing statistics that 60% of the abortions in America come from black females, which are 2.9% of the population.
Yeah, 3% of the birthing population. Yikes.
Accounts for 60% of the abortions. And so when you're anti-abortion, it would seem to be you're pro-black baby. But that's the whole narrative is flipped upside down.
Mm-hmm.
And so, I mean, here in Ohio, we had some things about abortion on the ballot last year in 2 elections. And the pro-abortion people won both of those.
Yikes.
And the last one, I live in Delaware County, which is always has been sort of a Republican bellwether. So there was a certain way to vote on the issue. It was a little bit confusing. But the pro-abortion side won in my county by a 2-to-1 margin.
Wow.
So think about that. In a Republican red county, 2-to-1. And now I'm reading a poll today. I don't know where it was in one of the papers I read, that this is the second most important issue now, being held against the Republicans, because they're taking away our right to abortion. But then in the new Foreign Affairs magazine that's coming out, okay, and I've already got the article. I subscribe to it. It's Council on Foreign Relations. They're globalists. They're technocrats. I know all that, but you got to read what the enemy's talking about to understand where they're trying to take things.
It's important that we see what they're up to at all times.
So what's the first article they released from their November-December issue? The age of depopulation.
Well,
so even the technocrats are saying, we got a problem. We're running out of people. Now, some of them, they're very, very happy about that. But the practical reality of that is very difficult, because the population, younger people are going away. They're not having kids. And in some places, it's hit already. If you go through the population pyramid, you look at even the current status of males to females of age when people would have babies. You're finding in some of those tiers that, for example, in China and in India, the number of males of child creating age, I still believe that men have a certain role in making babies, and women have the babies. I'm sort of a throwback there, but the age range. So let's just say like between 26 and 30. In current demographics in China, there will be like 8 million men and 4 million women. That seems to be a bit of a problem just for managing the population. So when you take, and I think these numbers are way understated, because they do sex selection abortions in India, and they favor males. So if you're pregnant with a female, find that out, you have an abortion, then you get pregnant, you have a male. That's what they want. They've had one-child policies in China, which have always favored unrestricted abortion and males. Between those two countries, they projected out over the next 50, 75 years. I actually think it will happen in the next 30 or 40 years. Between India and China alone, there will be 200 million males of childbearing, child creating age in excess of the number of women in just two countries. Well, what do you do? What do you do? Does that sound like a period of time like when Jesus said, you'll hear of wars and rumors of wars?
Yeah.
So that's why I talk about demographics. I may talk about this some at the conference in a couple weeks in Temecula, but I think it's a very, very big deal.
Mm-hmm.
But these countries, China, the mullahs in Iran, know that their legacy is at stake and they're running out of people. And maybe now is the time for them to do this problem and eradicate Israel from the face of the earth, which is what they say they want to do. And they've been saying that since 1979 revolution in Iran.
For which we know they won't be able to do because we know what God says about Israel.
Yeah, but that doesn't mean that there's not the sort of like these wars that sort of lead up to the big finality. But I'm just saying, as I love Israel, I've been there. It's so important to our faith. And the hatred of Jews and Israel is just. Yesterday, I did the sermon at FBC because I see this among people on the right, the Candace Owens, the Tucker Carlsons. There's a channel called Redacted that a lot of people listen. People send me videos all the time.
Mm-hmm.
These people hate Jews. Let's stop sugarcoating it. They are
So does the
Jew-hating, anti-Israel, anti-Zionist people.
Mm-hmm.
And in today's context, and so my sermon was titled "The Case for Israel Back in the Land," because as I look at these Bible prophecies, Ezekiel 35, 36, 37, 38, Matthew 24, Zechariah 8, Zechariah 12, Zechariah 14, how do these things even come about if there's not a nation of Israel run by Jews back in the land at the end times?
Mm-hmm.
Okay. And, I just don't understand why people don't see it. So if you want to listen to that, you can go to the first hour at Fellowship Bible Chapel YouTube yesterday or on our Rumble channel.
Yeah, absolutely. And I watched that first hour yesterday, actually.
And believe me, I didn't even scratch the surface of why did I.
Have I ever showed this to you?
So what's this? It says, why does Mike Adams? The Health Ranger?
Yes.
His program, which I peruse at times, is a sewage of Jew hatred.
Mm-hmm.
I would put him in the same category as Candace Owens and True News with Rick Wiles. And Mike, I think he'll probably sue me, so he claims to be a Christian. I think the evidence is sort of lacking on that personally, but that's for later to determine. That's my opinion.
Mm-hmm.
He's a public figure. And look, he says stuff that we agree with every now and then, okay? But on this issue, he is so wrong that this is all made up by the Jews. The Jews. I mean, and so can you give me an example on Mike Adams? And I don't remember the particular tweet that you had pulled up there, but he made this argument early on in this Gaza war that Israel was just doing this because they want to build a canal across Gaza and steal the gas. those crazy Jews. Look what they're doing. They're starting. So look, I've often said this, and I know there are evil people out there, and there's, everybody's got their theories about the Illuminati and Freemasons and all this stuff. And my point is, even Freemasons have accountants. This canal, there was a Ben Gurion canal proposed 60 some years ago, and they're going to build it from the Red Sea near Eilat to around Ashkelon, Ashdod, or Jaffa. They weren't going to go through Gaza, but how they were going to build, Vinny, listen to this. How they were going to build the canal was they're going to set off underground nuclear explosions to, sort of start the clearing the rubble away so they could build the canal. Now, let me ask you, in today's world, does any rational person believe that they're actually going to set off underground nuclear explosions to build a canal? They're not going to do that.
No, not at all.
It's not. It's pure. It was fantasy 60 years ago. Mike Adams talks about it like, oh, this is what they're going to do next week. And then he looks up and he goes, oh, they've got trillions of cubic meters of gas in the Mediterranean off the coast of Gaza. Little bit of truth. That's actually true. And so what did he report that as, though? Israel wants to steal trillions of dollars that belong to the Palestinians. But Mike, the trillions of cubic meters of gas off the coast of Gaza, if you take out the extraction costs and everything, it would probably be a net amount benefit of $5 to $8 billion. That's still a lot of money. Okay. But are you going to start a $1 trillion war to get $5 billion worth of gas? As I said, even crazy evil people have accountants. It doesn't make any sense. And it only makes sense if you are have so much hatred against Jews in your heart that you lose the ability to reason. And that's exactly what happened with him. And I followed his tweets. I think I'm still on his email list. And I see them every now and then, and they're just rants against Jews. It's unbelievable. Same with Rick Wiles at True News. It's very, very troubling.
Yeah, it is very troubling. And, unfortunately, John, Christians still follow these guys.
Well, look, they've said things that we agree with on certain things that have happened in the last 5 years. But on this one, it's unbelievable. It's really unbelievable. And you see this Jew hatred. I'll give you another example. The International Criminal Court. They're threatening to bring, arrest warrants against Netanyahu, the Prime Minister of Israel, and Gallant, the Defense Minister, and others. So do you know what happened today? The prosecutor at the International Criminal Court, it has now been revealed, is the subject of investigations at the International Criminal Court over sexual harassment of people that he works with.
So he's compromised now.
Absolutely. He's a creep. In fact, when I think I saw Carol Glick report on this today, and I trust her a lot. She said that when he was presented with the allegations, do you know what his comment was? Who's making the allegations? Is it a man, a boy, a woman, or a girl?
Wow.
Now, why would you even ask that question if you're not so completely immoral? And by the way, his brother was a member of parliament in the UK, and I believe he's in prison. They're Muslim. He's in prison for sexual abuse of a 15-year-old girl.
Not surprising. Not surprising.
So it seems like that family has a bit of a problem there. So So look, I know that this is all big global satanic spiritual warfare thing that we see going on, and
Mm-hmm.
I think the uh, I think the point I tried to make in my sermon yesterday was that this thing with Israel, it's very central and core to the Bible and to end times and to Bible prophecy, and the prophecies of the Bible still have to be fulfilled, and they will play out in the
Yes.
real world. Some place, sometime they're going to play out in the real world. And so what we do that are sort of devoted to this, and
Mm-hmm.
we have this conference coming up in a couple of weeks to talk about it,
Yeah, that's going to be
is
great.
we think these things will play out in the real world, and it certainly appears like it's the world that we live in right now.
Mm-hmm. Okay. Yeah, absolutely. So, John, when we're at the conference, you got to come by the
Oh,
table and do a live update with
I'll
me.
be there, right?
Yes.
We'll do something while I'm out there.
Mm-hmm. Yeah. I gotta have you. I gotta have you at the table when I do the live updates.
Right. And I'll be around Southern California for, like I'll be there on the 5th, so the conference isn't until the 8th. So I've got some open days there
Okay.
to fill up. So
Yeah,
if
that's
they
gonna
don't
be.
fill them up, I'll go
Oh,
play
that's right. You're
golf.
gonna be at
So,
Joe Pettick's church, right? With
yeah,
Tom.
Joe Petty, Calvary Chapel of the Harbor on November the 5th,
Mm-hmm.
election night.
Oh man,
So
boy, that's gonna be a doozy.
we may be getting some of the returns coming in and the projections and everything as we're doing our little update that night.
Mm-hmm.
And if it's bad, we'll just run and jump off the Huntington Pier and end it. We'll sort of do a big group hug off the end of the Huntington Pier.
I'll be headed that way probably if that happens.
Do they have a pier at Huntington Beach?
Yes, they do.
Yeah,
They
I
do.
thought they did.
Yeah, yes, they do.
So I'm sort of joking about that, but it's an incredible time to be alive.
Mm-hmm.
It really is.
Mm-hmm. Yeah. See, you know what? And I always tell people, regardless of what happens, God's going to sustain His people, anyways.
There's always a remnant, and so I've said this a few times. Kind of what I see going on in the world right now is I think God's preparing His remnant for the times ahead,
Mm-hmm.
and He's also sort of decoupling us from the world in a way. You understand what I'm saying? It's
Oh, yeah.
This world, this is really not over. We're here for a while, and we'll do the best we can, but our hope is something else.
Mm-hmm.
But exactly how you navigate that's kind of open to a lot of different interpretation and questions and that type of thing. But I think it's a pretty exciting time. When Jesus was here, I started to say this a long time ago when you asked the question. When Jesus was here the first time, so remember, patterns prophecy, right?
Mm-hmm.
So you learn by what happened, what was important, and how things played out. And so Jesus went to his disciples and he said, guys, or people, listen, you should consider the prophets long to live at the time that you're living at.
Mm-hmm.
And you should consider yourself blessed.
Mm-hmm.
Is that a pattern for the end times that we should look at what is going on around us and consider ourselves blessed?
Mm-hmm.
If Jesus was here talking to us right now, would he say the same things? Guys, the prophets longed to live at the time that you're living at right now. When you
Amen.
are seeing unfolding in front of you the resolution of the controversy of Zion and how all this is going to work out.
Mm-hmm.
Now, that doesn't mean it's easy, but it's a blessing to be able to see it, I think.
Oh, yeah. And those guys long to live for this time.
Right.
Yeah.
So that's so I don't know if you want to finish up talking a little bit about the Middle East. I don't know how much time you want to go, or
Okay, we'll go for a little bit more because we gotta talk about the Middle East.
yeah, we had, and by the way, I just want people to know that I did not shut Vinny's mic down. That was not me. So I can talk more. Although, I think somebody on, I don't know if I should give people ideas like this. You were sitting there talking and there was no sound coming out. So it would seem like somebody could dub in some, what do you think Vinny was saying? So we may see some things on TikTok or Instagram where people are making things up. So let's just, for the whole time, I'm pretty sure what he was saying is John Haller's a wonderful guest. Listen to him talk while I try to figure out why my mic is not working.
I kind of was saying that too. I was like, please keep talking, John. I need you to keep talking.
So anyway, if you want to bring this up, so look, let me zoom in on this a little bit. This is where it's all going down, and it's going to go down quickly. This is Israel. Outlined in red is the area that's on this map that I'm using. It's a disputed border. Also, you see the one along Gaza.
Mm-hmm.
Israel took out Sinwar, the head of Hamas. A few weeks ago, they took out, and I don't think he's had a funeral yet. That's kind of interesting. Nasrallah up in Beirut. That would be, let's see, right here. This sort of triangular peninsula. And by the way, I don't think we remember how prophetic, how many times Lebanon's mentioned in the Bible and the important role that it played. So this triangular peninsula here near the top, that's where Beirut is. But you see this little spit of land sticking out here down in the southern part of Lebanon?
Yes.
Right here?
Mm-hmm.
Well, that's the city of Tyre.
Tyre, there's Sidon were mentioned.
Tyre and Sidon. Yeah, Sidon would be a little bit, I don't know if it shows up. There's a blue line here. That's the Litani River that comes out at Sidon. So this river right here comes out around Sidon. But this is Tyre. And, there's a lot of stuff about, the cedars of Lebanon being used in the building of the temple. And there's even prophecies about, they sort of talk about Satan and Tyre and that type of thing. And Jesus mentioned it when he was here. Mm-hmm. Well, what a lot of people don't know is that Nasrallah, that's where he was from. The evil head of Hezbollah that they took out a month ago. And this series of just stunning military things that Israel did. The pager attack, the walkie-talkies, then they had the guys meeting in person, then they took out the guys meeting in person, and then they took out 3 towers that were above the command center where Nasrallah had his bunker. They dropped 83 one-ton bombs on that bunker. If you can get a hold of pictures of it, it made a hole in the ground like you wouldn't believe. Nasrallah's bunker was 14 stories underground, and they took it out.
Mm.
And then last weekend they hit. I've heard different stories. I think they hit Netanyahu's house in Caesarea with a drone, tried to assassinate him. And so what we have now is we have Israel. So if you look on this map here, so you see over here on the right, the blue area, that's the Sea of Galilee. And then you see this black line from the Mediterranean. Just south of there, there's a town called Nahariya. I have friends that live there. And this black line is the border of Lebanon. And along that border 450. Now, Naharia hasn't been evacuated that much, but 450 villages and towns have been pretty much emptied out of Israelis. Around 80,000 people. Because what happened on the war in Gaza started in the south. And immediately the next day, Hezbollah started launching missiles, rockets, mortars, and whatnot into northern Israel. And they've emptied out that stretch. And for example, Kiryat Shimona, which if you go here to the Sea of Galilee and then you kind of go up here in an angle from lower right to upper left, Kiryat Shimona is up in this area. It's a town of 25,000 people. Totally emptied out. A town up here in this little triangle called Metula, totally emptied out. A magazine did an article recently about the last man left in Metula. And so you have 80,000 people, and about 10% of the inhabitable landmass of Israel has been emptied out of people because of these rocket, missile, mortar attacks. But what's happening now is you go down here a little bit further to the south, you have this bay, and that's Haifa. And then south of that, you have what you would consider to be the tech and industrial heartland. These darker shaded areas are built-up areas. Herzliya, and this is the tech core. If you've ever driven through here, you see all these sites, Microsoft, Google, they all have big facilities and employment in Israel. That's the tech industrial corridor of Israel. And by the way, you see the red line here on the map?
Let's see.
So there's this red squiggly line. Okay, they want to give all that land to the Palestinians.
Wow, that's a lot of land.
Well, yeah, they want all that land, and if you look at it on a topographic map, that's the mountains of Israel. That's the biblical heartland. Yeah. So Hebron would be down here towards the south. Jerusalem is right here in this kind of crook in the middle. But look at the distance of this red line to the ocean. And this is the industrial population center of Israel, right in through here. That's only 8 miles. That's like, well, you guys in Southern California, you drive 50 miles for a cup of coffee, right?
Yeah, about that.
A good cup of coffee.
Yeah, real good cup, yes.
Or good ice cream or something like that. So, and so what happens when you have these central highland mountains, whoops, I didn't mean to rotate that, sorry, I don't want to give people vertigo. These mountains here, they want to give those to the what they call the Palestinians. Any solution that it does that is a suicide pact for Israel. And I'm like, it's not feasible. But what does everybody in the world do? The EU, the UN, the United States government, Kamala Harris, Joe Biden. Oh, you took out Sinwar. Take the win and give them all this land. Under what logic of geopolitics does that even make any sense?
Mm-hmm.
And by the way, this is most of the Bible that took place in the land of Israel took place in this mountainous area. Most of it. It's where Shiloh is. It's where Shechem. It's where Samaria is. It's where Bethel is. It's where Hebron is. It's where Jerusalem is. It's insane that they would give that away. But that is what the governments of the world want. And so when we talk about, this discussion about the covenant that's coming, that a lot of people think is coming, what does it mean? What does it involve? And will it be something that Israel willingly agrees to, or will it be, my personal view is, they're going to try to do it, and they're going to shove it down Israel's throat. They're going to say, we don't care. You're a little tiny country. Look how powerful we are. You do what we want. And literally, when that happens, eventually, in a very short period of time, all hell will break loose. Literally on the earth.
Wow. It's not going to work out for these guys either.
No, so they're, but this is where you should really be paying attention to what's going on. This is very difficult. Israel is facing, of course, they have the war in Gaza here. They have the war with Lebanon. It's not started yet, but they will have a war with Syria. If you zoom out a little bit more, they've had rockets from Iraq, from the Hezbollah and Shia militias that effectively run Iraq, have been launched in. Of course, you have Iran over here, mountainous area. Nobody's doing a land invasion of Iran. Tehran is up here near the Caspian Ocean. And then I think, so what's Israel going to do? They can attack the nuclear facilities. And by the way, interestingly enough, sorry about that. From Israel, they've had bombings down here in Yemen, down at the south end of the Red Sea. They've attacked ports down there, infrastructure like utility plants. But it's further from Israel to here, to Yemen, than it is from Israel to central Iran. And so that was a message that Israel sent saying, okay, listen, you guys are going to launch ballistic missiles at us. By the way, they launched 180 ballistic missiles. It took those missiles roughly 12 minutes to get from Iran to Israel. If they do a drone, it takes hours, but ballistic missiles travel much faster. And so what's Israel going to attack? I think the one thing you should watch, of course, here is this peninsula here in the Persian Gulf. This is Qatar, or however you would say. Ask James Cadiz how to say it, because he speaks Arabic. I don't.
Is it Qatar?
And, yeah, I say Qatar. The way Arabs say it. It's not a word that, certainly not words that people in the Midwest say.
Right.
I have enough problem with nuclear. I have a tendency to say that like all the other presidents have said. But so this is Iran to the north of the Persian Gulf, Straits of Hormuz over here, United Arab Emirates, Dubai, Abu Dhabi, and then you have, by the way, this is a satellite, based on a satellite map, and this is Dubai, that with the big tall buildings and everything. Look at these man-made islands that they've made off the course of United Arab Emirates. So they got a lot of money to throw around over there. Anyway, but Qatar is Sunni, pro-Muslim Brotherhood, which is Sunni, but they work with Iran, which is Shia, and they work with Iran against Israel. This is where Muslims unite. And in between Qatar, whatever, and Iran is the largest natural gas field on planet Earth, the Pars North and Pars South field. It's an incredible moneymaker. But all of the Iranian things go through this little island here called Karg Island. 90% of their oil and gas exports leave from that island. Israel may take that out because that would really damage the Iranian regime. And by the way, I think the oil they sell, I think China buys a ton of oil, gets a lot of its oil from Iran. Russia is getting a lot of missiles and drones from Iran. Putin has come out and said, don't you dare attack the nuclear facilities in Iran. And that may be because Putin doesn't want any dead Russians in Iran. They may have Russian experts there helping Iran develop a nuclear weapon. That's my personal opinion. And of course, if they take out the oil facilities at Karg Island, then China's going to be upset, and China's making a lot of threats about Taiwan. Russia's threatening nuclear war. They're having nuclear drills and that type of thing. I mean, we could be in a very, very big war in very, very short order here. This whole thing could erupt and spread around the world. And Russia's got some pretty powerful missiles, so it's not something to take care of. And in fact, tomorrow in Turkmenistan, I think it's in Turkmenistan, which is one of these. This is the Black Sea. This is the Caspian Sea here in the sort of center of the picture. And then these Central Asian republics, which I think are very important in Bible prophecy. We call them the Stand Republics. Turkmenistan, Tajikistan, Kazakhstan. Of course, you have Afghanistan and Pakistan. These are Muslim countries. And I really think we're on the verge of something pretty major. And I think we're going to see, I don't know, maybe at the conference, somebody will stand up and say, which I haven't seen anybody do yet, but someday there are going to be Bible prophecy guys who are going to stand up and say, this is that which was prophesied. You've just watched it be fulfilled.
Yeah.
And I'm saying is, you can see a lot of this starting to take shape right in front of us every day.
Right.
And I track this, I track this, Benny. I'm swamped.
Yeah. I don't know how you do it, honestly.
Well, I don't know. I do it. I'm able to read fairly quickly, but it's very, very difficult. So for the guys that do this, the Tom Hughes and James and all these guys, there are a lot of us that are trying to do this, trying to keep up and keep people informed. But I'm telling you, it is, it's daunting. I mean, most Sunday mornings I get up at 2 or 3 o'clock to finish up. And then I'm like standing up at the podium trying to prepare a couple slides to make the point that I want to make.
Right.
It's really unbelievable what I'm watching.
Yeah, and I don't believe the escalation is going to slow down either.
Now, a few years ago, I started using the term, acceleration, convergence, logistics, and understanding, and I kind of stand by that. I think I started using that like 5 years ago. You're going to see it accelerate, and it's happening very quickly. And sometimes it's where did that come from? Well, that's been building up for a while. There's an old phrase in the Hemingway book. I think it's The Sun Also Rises. There are two guys talking, and one guy goes, how did you go bankrupt anyway? And the guy goes, well, 2 ways. First, gradually, then suddenly. So, and I'm not to say that Hemingway is scripture by a stretch of the imagination, but I think the principle applies to what we're seeing happen in Bible prophecy. When Jesus came the first time, if you look at all the prophecies fulfilled in his first coming, remember, pattern is prophecy, right? So what happened in his first coming, we should expect to be happening at the time of his second coming. So the prophecies related to Jesus' first coming, about 60% of it, I think it's actually 59%. 59% of those prophecies were fulfilled between Palm Sunday and Resurrection.
Wow. Wow.
So what does that, so in the last week, things were really happening. And those disciples were there like, I don't think they really like, what's going on, And so I would hope that we will be people that would not be saying, okay, what's going on? And that but we're all surprised. But just pray for the people that do this, because it's getting increasingly difficult to keep up. When you look at, what, like the UN Pact for the Future, technological developments, tech control, you know, planned problems and responses. It's absolutely incredible what's going on. So it's a great time to be alive.
Yes, sir.
So.
Yes, sir. I totally agree with that. And I'm glad I'm alive at this time. I feel like we're chosen to be alive at such a time as this.
So I'm sort of at my age. I'm age 70 now, and that happened gradually but suddenly, as they say. And next year my wife and I've been married 50 years, and I keep, like, only old people been married for 50 years.
Yeah, my in-laws have been married for 65 years.
I know it happens so quickly, and so I'm at my 70, the sort of biblical 70. So I don't know if I'll be around. Who knows how long I'll be around to see the rest of this. And but I know my dad talked about this a lot before he passed away 33 years ago.
Mm-hmm.
But I can remember when the 6-Day War happened in 1967. That's all that guy talked about for weeks, because he thought it was so significant. So that's kind of where I grew up, and maybe that's where there's no doubt that's where I got it. And
wow.
It's happening very, very quickly. Very quickly.
Yeah, I believe we should feel very blessed, like you said earlier too, John. Yeah. I really don't want to keep you too long, because the wife might be calling you soon.
Nah, she probably got a new Hallmark. No, I'm just kidding.
Oh boy, the wives.
She likes those. I just, it's kind of a standing joke in our house that I mock her Hallmark.
Yeah,
Like,
that's what we do in this house too. I'm like, oh no, another Hallmark.
The two main characters, they're falling in love, and then there's an innocent misunderstanding, and then there's conflict, but they resolve it just before the end.
Yeah, right at 58 of the hour.
Right. I'm like, I could set my watch. It's like an atomic clock. You can always tell when it's got 10 minutes to go. If she was listening to this right now, she would be telling me to be quiet. And that doesn't work very much, does it?
No. Same here.
Yeah, so I'm fine, but I think we've talked long enough, maybe, that we've bored everybody out of existence. And I think we should consider ourselves blessed to live at this time. Mm-hmm. As difficult as it is, and someday we will have to talk about what I see going on with people in Israel.
Mm-hmm.
And I don't even know how to talk about it. Something is going on. And I think we are at a time where we're going to see this reconciliation between the church and Jewish people.
Mm-hmm.
And I'm just telling you, I'm seeing it. I'm talking to people. I'm interviewing them. And with the attacks on Israel and people in the church standing with Israel, this is an incredible witness to them.
Yes.
So
yeah,
I think we need to continue to do that. So I apologize, but the people that are not doing that right now, I have very little patience for. And we talked about a couple of them tonight.
Mm-hmm. That's right. That's why I'm glad I'm a part of it, and I'm trying to do my part to, get the information out, because I think it's our job as stewards for the Lord to do that.
I was talking to, I did an interview with someone last week from Israel, and he said, boy, there was this church in Ohio that I was talking to on Zoom. They prayed for us. That had a huge impact. It just so happens that's a guy I know very well. He's a local pastor here. We get together every now and then. And I'm just telling you, as I'm talking to a guy on live YouTube, and says, yeah, that was very important to me. Because this is named Danny Seaman, great guy. And he said, you know, I'm watching what's going on. You remember the girl that when they were kidnapping her in Gaza?
Yes.
And she had the bloody pants because, you know, obviously they had attacked her, assaulted her. And that was his daughter's best friend.
Wow.
From IDF training.
Unbelievable. Wow.
And he said, I can't. And she's still captive. She's still a hostage in Gaza.
Oh, my.
380 days later. And I know look, it's a war, okay?
Yes, it is.
It's a war. But I'm telling you, I have watched the Middle East for a large portion of my life. Maybe we can finish with this. I have seen Russia and Syria government destroy Sunni town, villages, and neighborhoods across Syria. Reduce them to rubble, millions of refugees destroyed, and I'm not seeing one of these people like Mike Adams or Rick Wiles or anybody raise a word of protest about that. But let the Jews defend themselves and they get their panties in a bunch, as they say. And I think it's evil and God is watching.
Amen. That's one thing we can count on. We know God's watching. And we just continue to do what we're supposed to do as believers, and that's defending Israel and, you know, the Jewish population.
Do Christian stuff, as I always say. Just act the right way and do the things you're supposed to do. I asked a pretty well-known preacher once. I said, "Hey, did you ever preach a stinker of a sermon?" And he kind of looked at me like, "I can't believe you're asking me a question like that." And I said, "So what's the answer?" And he said, "Yeah, I do. I have really bad ones." Now, I find that hard to believe, but let's just say that he thought they were. And I said, "What happened?" He goes, "Well, you know, God used that in people's lives. Some people got saved, some rededicated their life, some turned their life around." To which I said, "Oh, so it's not all about you. It's about what God does. And so we just need to do the right thing and let God do what he's going to do."
Absolutely.
Anyway.
Absolutely.
Appreciate it, Benny.
Yes, thank you. I always appreciate talking with you. Would you please do us the honor and just praying us out?
Sure. Lord, just pray that you will always help us to keep in mind of the seriousness and gravity and hopefulness of the time in which we live as we can watch these things unfold. Pray that you'll help us to be wise in how we talk with people about this, and always help us to recognize those opportunities that we will have, that you will give us to share the gospel of Jesus Christ with those around us as we prepare the world for the coming of the Messiah. Bless us. In Jesus' name, amen.
Amen. And God bless you all. Thank you all for sticking around with us too. And we appreciate it. We apologize for the technical difficulties on the streaming platforms end. But I'm glad you guys are still able to hear what John and I had to say to you. And please share the podcast, and take care of one another. And I will see you tomorrow. God bless you all.